The Purple Putter Pooch is simply a fun golf accessory. Designed to protect the precious putter, the Scottish Terrier adds a bit of comic relief to some tense shots. He makes a great gift for men and women alike. The companion pattern is available by following the link in the description below. In this video, we make all the little parts like the ears, brows, nose, and eyes first. This way, they are ready and waiting for the magic to happen. Then, as we knit the body, collar, and head, all in one piece, of course, the secrets for adding the parts as we go are revealed. When the Purple Putter Pooch comes off the machine, he's magically assembled, and that leaves minimal finishing. So I'm going to pull out 3 needles. I'm going to retract the middle needle. I'm set at tension 5, knit in both directions, and I'm going to knit 1 row. I'm going to hang a weight just to keep it in place and pull up the middle needle. I'm going to pull these other 2 out, and I'm going to just knit 18 rows. Now I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving another 8-inch yarn tail on this end. You can use a darning needle or you can use your double-eye bodkin. And I'm just going to pull these out to the hold position, which puts the stitches behind the latches, and pop these right off. Now, when I pull up the end, I'm going to take 1 extra stitch down here just to keep it secure. And on my other end, on my beginning end, I'm going to go get my beginning yarn tail. And all you have to do is pull this end, and it'll bring it nice and tight. And when I stretch it, it's about 3 inches because one of these makes 2 eyebrow arches. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is pull up 6 needles, but I want them in work position because I'm working on a ribber, and I want to take every other needle out of work. Then I'm going to thread up. Okay, my tension is on 5 and 5, knit in both directions for both the ribber and the carriage. There are no needles on the ribber in work at this point. Knit 1 row. See, I only have 3 little loops on there, but I need to put a little weight on it. So I use this little device. It's a little sock grabber device, and I just put it on there, and that's just enough to hold it down. I'm going to bring the other 3 needles that I took out of work back into work. So I have 6 needles on the back, and I'm going to knit back. This is where I transfer the 2 center stitches to the ribber. Since my selector, my racking indicator is in P3, I'm just picking the 2 needles that are right in between these 2 needles. So I have a 2-2 rib configuration over 6 stitches. Make sure those needles you emptied are out of work. I'm just going to drop my 7 in because it's very hard to get in there with anything else, and put a weight on the little loop on the 7. That'll hold it down. I'm going to knit carefully the next row. Okay, so this one didn't knit off, and that sometimes happens on this one. So I'm adding my presses just so that the knitting will keep knitting off, and I'm going to knit until row 10. I'm on 3, here's 4, and 10. Now I'm going to go back and find my double-eyed needle and transfer these 2 stitches back from the ribber to the main bed. Take those out of work so there's no stitches on the ribber again. And now I'm going to knit carefully 3 rows. I'm going to separate my carriages because I'm going to drop my bed. I need a little space now. There we go. And I'm going to get my latch tool, bring all these stitches out to hold position so that the stitches fall behind the latches. These are very tight. I could take some of this weight off because it's just a little bit too much pulling down. That's the weight off. And I'm going to simply pop the first one off, put it behind the latch on the latch tool, and pop the second one off and pull that one through. Get the next one. Now these are tight, so you want to be careful you don't drop them off. They'll be hard to pick up because they're quite tight. But the tightness has a benefit. And the benefit is that when you look at the little ear, the bonnet on the ear is kind of going to permanently stay kind of forward like that. Wrist rolls slightly forward onto the ribbing. But you say, oh, that edge is not neat. Well, that's our cast-on edge. And the fun thing about this cast-on is all you have to do is pull the yarn tail at the cast-on edge, and it brings it right into place. So there is our little ear. The nose is made exactly the same way as the eyes. Form a slip knot and chain 2. Yarn over, insert your hook in the second chain from the hook, pull up a loop. Yarn over, insert, pull up another loop. You're going to do this a total of 5 times into that one single stitch. That's 3. Here's 4. And here's 5. Now it gets pretty darn tight in there, and that's okay because you want it to be tight. Now what you do is you yarn over and you pull through all the loops on the hook. And before you let loose of this tension, you chain one really tightly. Then return to that same place where you were inserting your hook before and slip stitch. And that gives you a nice, firm nose or eyeball. What I like to do then is just leave myself some yarn tail because I'll need them later. And I'm going to just knot this tightly. I just did a regular knot there, and then I cross over the opposite direction. That gives me a nice firm knot that won't come undone. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to bring out 29 needles. Now I like to do my ribbing this way because then it's counted off at the same time. So I brought out 30, so there's my 29. And then I'm going to retract every other needle out of work because this is a 1-1 rib. Then all I have to do is go to the ribber and find one needle in between the 2 end needles, see? And then bring up every other needle on this until I get to the other end. And I don't have to really count because when I get to the end, I want to make sure that I'm 1 short of this end and 1 short of this end. So that means I have 15 needles on this side and 14 on my ribber. I like to run my carriage over both the ribber and the main bed so that I align the needles the way it likes to see them. So I'm ready to knit. So with my medium color purple, I'm going to thread up my machine, and I've already set my carriage to 0 on the ribber, 0 tension on the main bed, and knit in both directions. And I'm going to knit 1 row. And that creates this beautiful zigzag across here. I'm going to put my carriage out of the way for now. I'm going to pick up my cast-on comb for my ribber, and I'm going to slip it up here right in between the needles and thread up the wire. I'm going to hang a weight, and I'm going to set my carriages to tension 1, both of them, and then partial knitting going this way on the ribber. So I'm ready to knit. So now what my expectation is that the main bed will knit only. And it did. Now I'm going to put my main bed into partial knitting, and my ribber is still set to knit when it goes this way. Now I'm going to take my main bed out of partial knitting, and my carriage on my ribber is set to not knit. So I'm going to go 1 more row just knitting the back bed. Or I should say the main bed. Now that concludes the cast on for a 1-1 rib. So this is when I'm going to do some other settings. I'm going to switch my tension up to 5 on both the ribber and on the main bed. I'm going to take the ribber out of partial knitting. My main carriage is set to knit in both directions, so is my ribber. The first few rows always tend to have little issues with the edge stitches. And so I'm going to put 7s on my edge stitches. 7s are these little metal devices, little wires. They're readily available. And you just hook the weight in the bottom. So I take my 7, see it's shaped like a 7. I take my 7 and on each edge, this goes in there, but you have to put it between the beds and into the ribbing. And then I find it on down below and hang the weight in that little loop. I am almost ready to begin, but this machine ribber in particular likes to have pressers. So I'm just putting them into place. It doesn't occur on other machines because this is just one of the early models of the ribber. I'm going to knit 22 more rows. Okay, my row counter is at 26. I don't need this color anymore, so I'm going to cut it. I only need enough to seam with for that few rows. So I'm going to just tuck it down in there. Rethread with dark purple. Thread it into my machine. I'm going to knit 2 more rows. Because all I'm doing is giving the dog a little collar. And I'm going to trim this too. I don't need much to seam because it's only 2 rows long. Now I'm going to my main lilac color. I'm on row counter 28. I'm going to knit 14 rows. Here's my 14 rows. And this is the fun part of this whole thing. We're going to assemble our little character as we go. And the first thing that we're going to add are his ears. Now, if you can tell, I have finished them, so I only have 1 strand left. And that's good, because I might need that for later, but who knows. All right, now, the front of the ear is the part that has the knit side of the stockinette at the top. Because you may not have set your things up right to dead center, I'm going to count my stitches off from the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the 6th and 7th needle on the main bed. That's all we're concerned with, are the needles on the main bed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See, that leaves 1 needle in the dead center. And that happens to be at my number 1, left number 1 needle for this demonstration. But there's a couple things we want to do first. First, let's disconnect our carriage from each other. The only reason I'm doing that is because we do need to drop the bed a little bit, because we do need a little bit of room to work over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the stitch in between these 2 stitches, also on the main bed. And I'm going to take all 3 off, or 2 stitches on the end needles and the 1 in the middle. Then, with the wrong side of the ear facing me, or the right side of the ear facing the machine, I'm going to stab, or just push, my 3-prong tool right through it. Okay? Now, without getting the gate posts, I'm going to tuck the yarn tail and the ear down in the machine. Then I'm going to return to those same 3 needles, which are these 3 right here, and I'm going to just slide this stuff right back on the machine. Just like that. Now, I have to have my double eye needle to do the second part of this. I'm going to pull this needle up. See how they'll collide? And I'm going to take the stitch off. Now you got to be careful because there's a lot of tension on that stitch. And I'm just transferring it to that middle needle over here. There we go. So now I have these 3 needles there, and this needle is going out of work. Then, on this side, I'm going to do the exact same thing for the second ear. Now these are ready to be knit off. Now I'm going to reach around and I'm going to pull that ear down a little bit. on both those ears. Make sure this stitch is out of work because otherwise those needles will collide. And I'm going to raise my bed up and I'm going to reattach my carriages. This row is going to be a little tough to knit, so bear with me. So now I'm going to take my double-eyed transfer tool and I'm going to grab that center stitch of each ear and move it back to the ribber. Now take those stitches, we're in work, and make sure they're out of work. I'm going to knit 3 more rows. We have to drop the ribber bed yet again because we want to hang the eyebrows across the 2 eyes. Now, this is how you do it. First, you find your center stitch, which we know is right there. Stitch off, and you're going to insert it through the 2 edge stitches on the eyebrow. While we have the opening open, we're going to take the 2 ends and tuck them in. And then we're going to rehang the eyebrow and then the stitch. Take off the marker. This time we're going to leave the 2 edge stitches and get them behind the latch, and we're going to keep the stitch in the hook and we're going to knit it through. See how easy that's going to be now? So that's what we have to do there. Then we skip 1 stitch on the main bed and we take this stitch off. We're going to push one of the ends, the end nearest that side, looking for the eyebrow. See how that is? We're going to put this one on this stitch and hang it right there with the stitch. We're going to do the same thing on the left side. Now they're attached in 3 places. So now I'm going to raise my bed up again. Connect my carriages. And I'm going to knit 1 row very carefully. Whenever you have all this stuff on here, you want to be careful about it. And I'm going to pull up my tension. Here we go. And there, we knit all the stitches across. But now it's time to add the eyeballs. This time I don't really have to lower my bed, but remember those stitches in between the center stitch and the outer edge of the brow? Those are the stitches we're going after this time. Then, here's my center stitch, here's my eyeball here. I'm going to put an eyeball over here too. So I'm going to pull that stitch out and take it off my hook. Hang it, hang the knot right under the knot. Push that right there. I'm going to bring up my latch tool. I'm going to grab these ends and bring them to the inside and then put this eyeball and the stitch back on the needle. Push these down, make sure I didn't bump anything out of place, and I'm ready to knit some more. And so now I'm going to knit 11 rows. Okay, I'm at row 58. The nose goes right on that center stitch. So I'm going to take my center stitch off, stick it through my knot, tuck this down in here, get my latch tool up there, both those yarn tails and pull them through. Rehang the stitch, and we're good to go. We're going to knit 2 rows carefully. And that went down pretty good. We're going to be transferring from the ribber to the main bed. So back with my transfer tool, the double-eyed transfer tool, I'm just going to take every other needle that's on the ribber and move it. It doesn't matter whether you start with the end ones or the middle one. Set the tension 1 full number tighter and knit 2 rows. And now I'm going to transfer the other ones. What you're doing is you're just reducing the amount of bulk in the muzzle of the dog. All the rubber needles go out of work. Okay, I'm going to set my tension to 3 this time. And I'm going to knit another row. At this point, I'm going to take the weights off of everything because this is very tight tension. That's one way to remove weights. Cut the yarn leaving about 18 inches. Bring the needles out to hold and pop the stitches off the machine with a yarn needle. So now we have our putter pooch right off the machine, and it's just a matter of finishing. And so what I like to do is I like to start with the nose and the eyeballs. Easy to get rid of these ends and to reinforce the join to the knitting. Once that's secure, just do that little knot again where it comes, the left one comes over the right the first time and in and around, and then the right one goes over the left one, and the left one gets tucked in from the front. Now I just trim it to like 1/2 inch. The next ones I want to get out of the way are these brow ends. And the brow ends are kind of important because you want to make sure the brow sits around the eyeballs. So you want to tuck this one in. If you think the eyebrow is a little too loose, just run this along the edge so you can then adjust the tension around the eyeball. That's if you need to. The other one came out just perfect. There he is. Little terrier eyebrows. The bonnet ears go on really nice because they have a lot of security and they stand up nice. So this one I can just finish with a knot. So I start at the nose. Now we already took the nose off on this yarn, so I'm going to just pull it up tight and stitch through this end a couple of times just to secure it. Then I can start working down the seam. See where this one comes out of? We're going to go over to this edge stitch here because this is a 1-1 rib. Then I'm going to come back to the next stitch and go in the next one, just the 1/2 a stitch at the edge, and wait till you see what this looks like. Now, because this is a skinny little guy, I like to put a darning egg right in there, and it helps me see the edge stitch of the rib on each side. Okay, and you see how absolutely neat that is? Don't pull it too tight. I'm just doing a running stitch. Every so often I'll do a back stitch just to capture it, but it works really well. If you don't have a darning egg, you can use a toilet paper tube, and it'll do the same thing because it gives you enough body that you can stretch it around it and you can easily see what you want to stitch back and forth. So we're just down to weaving the last of the ends, and I'll finish that and I'll join you then. We want to take a piece of the dark purple or black, and I'm going to split a ply out of this piece of yarn because I want it to be nice and skinny. And I'm going to use a pointier needle because it allows me to pierce the fibers of the yarn that's already there. I'm just going to stitch back and forth. Now that I have enough in there, I'm going to trim this off as tight as I can, and then I just do it on the other side. Now this is 3 plies of the darkest color that matches his eyes and his collar, and I have laid out where I want to put his little mouth. So I'm going to bring up my yarn on the inside and just take 1 stitch from this marker and leave that end hanging because this is my guide yarn. I want to come straight down this rib, which is the second rib under the eyebrow, and my next point is right here. So I'm going to stitch up in there. I'm just laying the guide yarn in place. From here, I want to shape his muzzle a little bit, so I'm going to come up to this point here, right under his nose, but not at his nose. Then I'm going to come back down to the next point where it changes direction, which is back to create this side of his muzzle. So you can see I'm starting here, going up, giving him a little bit of a shape on his muzzle, and coming back down to here. And then I'm going to go right to this point. And that is my guide for how I'm going to do his muzzle. And you can get a kind of a good feel of how his little mouth will shape up. So now, once I have that established, I'm just going to come back and pull that guide yarn aside and bring up my stitch there, and on the top side of his mouth and around the guide yarn. So it does a double duty, that guide yarn. So I'm coming up under the stitch and then under the stitch. It's just a faster way to do this. I've done so many of these little dolls. See how it's already finished as I go? And there, our Putter Pooch is completed. Isn't he cute? Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications of upcoming videos and events. Happy machine knitting!